right, Tide Nation, I appreciate you guys joining me on a lovely Tuesday evening. This is yours truly, Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama Magazine, host of In My Own Words, the podcast, coming on here to give you another edition of Instant Reaction or Instant Analysis, just a video here recapping the events going on for Crimson Tide football. Of course, you've all have seen and heard the reports that took place on Monday. Former Alabama player and staffer Freddie Roach was in Tuscaloosa on the University of Alabama campus, and he's been very interested in the defensive line coaching position. The Crimson Tide transitioning Brian Baker from that spot to an off-field role, and it was the same role held down by Burton Burns, that being the assistant athletics director for all things football. Burns now being hired to coach running backs for the New York Giants in the National Football League. With Brian Baker being transitioned, moved to an off-field role, Freddie Roach has become interested in being the defensive line coach for the Crimson Tide. And it's a really interesting move, and it's one that Nick Saban needs to make in bringing him in. Now, of course, a lot of you have thoughts on, well, what's going on with all the talks in terms of Bo Davis coming back. A lot of you have heard on, Bo Davis coming back, whispers of Nick Saban trying to restore Bo Davis to Alabama. Those talks are not dead. Those talks are still very much alive, still going around. However, that may be delayed for another year, according to close, credible, respectable sources I've spoken with within the program. The deal is with Bo Davis, he has 1 year remaining on his contract with the Detroit Lions, and as of right now, in his mind, he really doesn't feel like it's financially stable at the point to where he could leave that contract and come be with the Crimson Tide. So he will perform his final year with the Lions, and then at the end of the contract, we're looking at 2021 of Alabama full on bringing Bo Davis back to the program to kind of finish this run of national championship strongly for Nick Saban. But right now, we are looking at potentially having Freddie Roach in Alabama be the defensive line coach. And it doesn't get any bigger than having somebody, number one, that's from the state of Alabama doing this job. Roach hails from Killen, Alabama, so that's number one. Hails from the state, knows the culture of the state, knows the culture of Tide football, knows the culture of the Alabama-Auburn rivalry, the Iron Bowl, the culture of the Alabama-Tennessee game, very familiar with the high schools around the state, so doesn't get any bigger than having somebody from the state. That's number one. Number two, Freddie Roach played at Alabama, and he played here at a time where Crimson Tide football was not popular. Let's be honest, Alabama wasn't hitting then the way it's hitting now, and no offense to Mike Shula, but it just wasn't hitting then. Those were known as the lean years or the locust years. But Freddie Roach, despite all of that, came to Alabama anyway from Brooks High School. And he was here from 2001 to 2005, and though he redshirted his initial freshman year in 2001, had a very decorative career. We're talking about 271 career tackles, played in over 50 career football games, a guy that was a National Freshman of the Year in 2002 as a redshirt freshman, a SEC Defensive Player of the Year, a two-time All-SEC selection, someone of whom in 2005, on a team where he was with D'Amico Ryans, Juwan Simpson, of course, guys like Rudy Griffin and Simeon Castilla, that 2005 Alabama team defensively was in the top 10 nationally in all 5 major defensive categories. We're talking scoring defense, total defense, run defense, and pass efficiency defense. All 5 of those categories, Bama ranked in the top 10 nationally in 2005. Roach was voted to the All-Decade team for Alabama for the 2000s era. He would go to the National Football League, was picked up as an undrafted free agent in 2006 by the New England Patriots. Of course, it was short-lived, his NFL career. However, he came back to Alabama in 2008, got his bachelor's degree in human environmental sciences, and was hired on to the coaching staff as an assistant strength coach under Scott Cochran from 2008 to 2010. He served in that role, and he was part of the first national championship, first BCS national title of the Nick Saban era, and the first national championship for Alabama since Gene Stallings back in the 1992 season. Freddie Roach was part of that 2009 staff that got the job done. Of course, after that, he would leave to coach defensive linemen for East Mississippi Community College, winning a National Junior College Athletics Association championship. And from East Mississippi, he went to Murray State and then to Ole Miss, with Murray State, South Alabama, and then Ole Miss. But prior to Ole Miss, he had a second stint with the Crimson Tide from 2015 to 2016 as a director of player development. And in that role, he saw two back-to-back Southeastern Conference championships, 2015 and 2016, and a college football playoff national championship in the 2015 season. So Freddie Roach, from the state of Alabama, played at the University of Alabama, was a coach or a staffer on Nick Saban's coaching roster at Alabama. So it doesn't get any bigger than having a guy at the university that knows the fan base, knows the culture, knows the program, has played here. Sometimes you just got to have that perfect, direct, ideal fit. You can have a guy that has all the experience in the world, i.e. Brian Baker, but just because you have all the experience in the world does not mean you are a direct, perfect fit for Bama. You got to be a fit when you talk about Alabama. And in terms of that Bama factor that Nick Saban talks so much about, Freddie Roach fits that to the T. And just going back to his prowess at Ole Miss, I mean, here's a guy that at Mississippi got the most out of his players. Now, the talent level at Ole Miss is drastically different from the talent level at Alabama. At Ole Miss, we're looking at more so of the 2 and 3 stars. Now, Freddie, they came up on some 4 stars. They came up on a 5-star here and there. But more than likely, it was more so the 2 and 3 stars. And with those guys, Ole Miss, in Roach's 3 years as a defensive line coach, from 2017 to 2019, this past season, Ole Miss, 84 sacks combined those 3 years. Of the 84 sacks, 58.5 came from defensive linemen. That's 70%. 70% came from the defensive line. So Roach got the maximum effort from those guys. And when you look at what he would have if Alabama brings him into the Crimson Tide, way more talent, way more potential, way more guys that are capable of producing even bigger numbers. And on top of that, the guy's a stomped down elite recruiter, can relate to these young kids, can relate to these young athletes. And if Freddie Roach was to come in here, that would guarantee Alabama getting the 4-star defensive tackle McKinley Jackson out of the Mississippi area at 6'2", 327 pounds, the 4-star who has a big relationship with Roach. Jackson, a part of the 2020 recruiting cycle. So relates well to athletes, big-time recruiter, gets the maximum effort from his guys. It would be a big deal for Alabama if it can bring in Freddie Roach and him to kind of have that stopgap year, coach the 2020 season, and if he was to go to the NFL, he can go to the NFL, and you could restore Bo Davis for 2021. So that would be pretty awesome there if Alabama could finesse that and bring that into fruition. But the other news here that's going on, aside from Freddie Roach, is It's being reported by Chris Brees, the sports director and sports anchor for CBS 42, that Pete Golding will possibly be retained at Alabama, and he could be retained at defensive coordinator. Now, if one was to take a poll, now nothing has been set in stone yet. This is just Brees putting the information out there according to, I guess, folks he has spoken with, the things he has heard, that Pete Golding is set to be retained or could be retained at the University of Alabama. But if one was to have a poll on the popularity that Golding has for the Crimson Tide or with the Crimson Tide, the poll would be split down the middle, because you have a lot of fans that want no more dealings with Pete Golding calling the plays. They saw what happened this past year, and they're like, no, this is the worst thing ever. No, get this man as far away from Tuscaloosa as humanly possible. Our defense sucked. This defense was terrible, and it was Pete Golding's fault as to why it was terrible. I mean, Alabama this past year, gave up 18.8 points per game overall. It gave up a total of 203 points to Southeastern Conference teams, which was on an average of 25.4 points per game. But end all be all, when you look at the final tally, Alabama still finished in the top 20 for scoring defense. It was not too shabby. But when you talk Alabama fans that have grown accustomed to having the Crimson Tide have that soul-crushing, making you feel dejected type defense, and a defense that finishes in the top 5, top 10, when you finish in the top 20, that is not good enough for the Alabama football fan. And on top of that, despite how much you value Tua Tagovailoa, you appreciate Tua Tagovailoa, you will forever cherish Tua Tagovailoa, the last 2 years, and especially 2019, Bama fans still felt like something was missing. And at the heart of it all, it was, of course, the defense. People were like, well, where is our defense? Where's the defense? This is not Bama. I would rather have a mediocre to average offense, but a defense you couldn't move against. Give me that. I would rather have that. Alabama fans, you guys are kind of the steel plant workers or coal miners, if you will. And with that, I say you have that blue collar, hard hat, tough nose, tough minded mentality. That's what it is. I mean, you would rather take the rock 'em, sock 'em, kill 'em, make 'em die defense over the explosive offense any day of the week. So when you look at the last 2 years, especially this past season, a lot of Alabama fans definitely would like to do away with Pete Golding. But there's the other half that go, you know what? We already have people that claim coaches don't want to work for Nick Saban because he's too tough, because he's too demanding. We already don't have the coaching continuity as it is. Why not keep Pete Golding? I mean, he entered the year without having a healthy roster. He entered the year with the glass half empty. He entered the year with no Dylan Moses, with no Joshua McMillan, and then 3 games into the season, LeBron Ray goes down, and he's out for the rest of the year with a foot injury. And then you also lose DJ Dale to an injury as well. So, I mean, you're already pretty tied down here with medical mishaps. So you're playing 8 to 9 true freshmen, and for the first time, you're not playing the freshmen because they're just good. You're playing the freshmen out of necessity. Alabama has never had a situation where you're playing young guys out of necessity. And then at the heart of your defense, you've got 2 18-year-old kids in Shane Lee and Christian Harris looking for affirmation, but the guy that they're looking to get the affirmation from is just as young as they are. So it's hard. It's difficult. And on top of all of this, I mean, the only person that had the patience to really teach those guys, was Pete Golding. And Nick Saban mentioned that he had the patience to teach those guys. Nick Saban not quite having the patience. And as much as people want to believe that the 4- and 5-star freshman can pick up things just as quickly as the junior or senior that has played college ball 2 and 3 years, that's not always the case. Experience to run a highly complex Nick Saban defense, that's a big deal. You got to have that experience. And Shane Lee and Christian Harris, it was kind of, trial by fire for those guys. And when you get a Dylan Moses, a Joshua McMillan, when you have these guys healthy, especially going into next season, it's going to be much better for Alabama. So it's straight down the middle. Half the folks do not want anything to do with Pete Golding. The other half is going, guys, look at the troublesome circumstances this man had to go through in year 1 as the primary DC. You get some guys healthy. You get Freddie Roach to put with Pete Golding. Who knows? This may actually work better for him, but that's what's going on, folks. Leave your comments at the bottom of the screen. How do you feel about Freddie Roach coming in here to be the defensive line coach? And should Alabama give Pete Golding a second opportunity to right the ship? Leave those thoughts right here at the bottom of the YouTube channel. But this is just yours truly, Stephen Smith of Touchdown Alabama Magazine, providing you with a little instant reaction of what's going on right now in Alabama football.